Now I will talk a little bit about Git clients. And by client, I mean the command line is a client, as you can imagine, because it uses Git. That's how you can imagine client. And there is something, for instance, called source tree that you asked about.
Yeah.
Which basically it's, again, what we talked in the beginning. The command line is a command line interface, and these clients are a GUI, graphical user interface. So there is source tree, and there is one called Git Kraken, which I've tried to use both, but I didn't like it. Basically, that was my final answer. But I do have Git Kraken installed, and I can show you, for instance, how it looks like. The same exact repository that we are working on, the Git, the Hacky Future Git, you can see up there. This, again, is more of a visual help for you that helps you like how to. Oh, come on! I cannot move it. No, okay, whatever. Like it helps you visualize what's happening on your repository. Because yes, on a command line, you only see what's happening right now. And when you write git log, might not be that understandable of what you're seeing here. I mean, if you're not used to it, at least. And in tools like Git Kraken and source tree, you install them on your machine, and they have to connect to a project, basically. So it's on a command line, you have to go into the project. You have to cd into the folder where the Git project is. On this one, you basically can open a repo and then try to find it here. So if I go to here, Hacky Future Git, I mean, I already had it open, so it just opens that one here. But you still work on your code, on your VS Code on that folder. So, and in here, again, this is the same network tab we saw. You know, you can see like all the changes. It's just vertical instead of horizontal. The good part of these tools that I see is that you have all the commands here. You can pull, you can push, you can commit, you can add, everything here on this tool. It's just, again, for me, when I look at it, a lot of times I'm like, I have no idea what to do right now.
Yeah.
And when I look at the command line, I know exactly what I have to do. That's the only big thing for me.
There's something new here I don't see. Stash and Bob.
Yeah.
It's something with command line. It's the same?
Yes, so in the command line, you have exactly the same commands, stash and pop. That's basically to keep your changes without committing them. That only happens if you want to switch to a branch, do something really fast, and then switch back. Like, I don't use that almost ever, because I usually commit everything. So
Yeah.
the good part here of this type of tools, it also shows you the remote, which means shows you what's happening on a server, on a GitHub or GitLab or whatever you use. So you can see all the branches and everything. That's a good part of it. Like you have a visual look of what's happening all the time. And again, this only has me because I'm the only one working, but if you would have a different user, it would show here. And for instance, if we go to our code, yeah, as you can see now in here, it already added a new thing, so that you can actually, you can see here, oh, this file has some changes. You see, like it's more of an interactive way to do. And then you can say stage file, which basically means git add to it, I think. So it has, again, it's more of a graphical interface, but again, it's something I really don't like to use for myself. And again, Git Kraken and source tree are companies as well. They make their own this software, and they make their own things, so they are a bit different from each other, of course. So they have different features, and that's also why, like, again, I don't use it, so I cannot really say how good or bad it is. It's just I tried to use some of them, and I didn't really like it. But one thing you also have is on your editor, like when you're looking at your VS Code, a lot of times you see here M, or for instance, if I new or U, because it's untracked. Basically, that's what it means. Git doesn't know what it is. Which means that your editor also has a Git tool that can help you do things, and that's basically this one here. This is what source control, which basically means Git. If you click on it, you can actually see also the differences here, like of all the changes that are there. And from what I know, you can even commit from here, isn't it? Yeah. Just by writing there, you can put a commit message, and then it commits. And again, this is also possible, but I don't use it at all. I use the command line. That's the thing. Like there is a lot of tools you can use. There is a lot of stuff. It's just that, again, developers have different preferences. So some people prefer this, some people prefer that. For me, I got used to the command lines since the beginning, so I never used anything else. Basically, I tried Gitkraken, I tried Source3, but like let's say I actually tried Gitkraken at work. Like I went, like every morning I would open, and then suddenly I stopped opening. I would open the command line instead all the time. So like my memory always went to the command line because that's what I'm used to. So that's basically it. But again, there are a lot of those tools you can use. One command that I actually forgot to tell you is, for instance, right now I before I added the item 4, but then now I want to remove it. But by doing this, even though we could say like there is no change, like there should be no changes, right? But if we write git status, there's still a change for some reason. But now if we write git diff, the change, oh, did that committed actually? No, item tree. Git status, yeah, git diff. Yeah. Now if I do this, oh, we added the item 4, true. That's why. But okay, so what I wanted to change is I want to undo every change. Like I want to, instead of going to my VS Code and try to say like, no, I remove this, add this, to go back to what it was before. There is a command you can write.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can see there is a change on this file. So if you write git checkout, and that's one of the notes that they tell you there. You can discard the changes. So git checkout -- space the file name. Now it should be whatever it was before. Now this one is okay. I'll just commit it so that we clean up all this mess. New item. So now, for instance, we add item 5, 6, oops, no, 6 and 7. So now git status. Now there are changes there, right? Git diff. There are all those items, and we want to undo everything. So we can do git checkout -- and now this is like the add. If we want to undo everything, we can just say dot. And now everything went away. Even if we would have changes in another file. So for instance, if we have a couple of spaces here, now we have changes, spaces, changes, spaces. Yeah, all of them have changes. Only this one, spaces. Okay. Now git status. Now all our files have changes. But now we were like, no, whatever I did until now, I don't want it anymore. So if we do this, it cleaned everything. So now there's nothing no changes there. And again, this git checkout, I actually use it quite a lot to clean the changes, because sometimes like I start working on something like, oh no, this should not be the thing I should work on. So I just clean whatever I've done. It's true, you lose all the history, like it's gone, right? Because it's gone. So it's something you should use with careful as well, or you should know what you're doing, basically. Okay, so now what we will try to do is to create a new repository from scratch. Like we want to start a new project, basically. So the way you do it is that I'll quickly do this. Yeah. So on your GitHub, of course, you have this plus thingy here, and if you're using other tool like GitLab, whatever, it's very similar. Then you always need a repository name. So like your future. If I try to do this, it actually tells us no, this already exists. So you cannot have the same
Project.
name. So it saves you for that.
So are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. But now I'm I'm creating this one. So you just hit create, and again, this is like the documentation on GitHub or GitLab or whatever in Git-related stuff is very, very useful. And it's something you should always read what they're trying to tell you, because a lot of times, like, you just do things and you're like, oh, how should I have done that? If you read it, it's easy to understand. So basically, when you create a new repository, there might be 3 situations that you can be on. One of them is you're starting a brand new project. And that's the best case scenario you can be. It's like you have nothing yet and you want to start a project. And that's this, basically. Another one is you already did some code locally on your machine, but you don't have Git yet. You haven't put anything into Git, but you already have code. So that sometimes might be a bit of a problem, because you need to, how can I start a new Git in my code? But again, there is this one here, right? And then, of course, this one is importing like one repository into another. That's something I don't think anyone does. I mean, it's you need to be in a weird case to do this. And again, if you follow the steps that are here, they are quite easy to understand, at least. And again, this is using the command line. It's not using any Git Kraken or any interface type of thing. So basically what it says is that you need to start, this first line basically tells you to create some content. You need to have something, otherwise Git does not work. Like if you don't have any file, or like if it's an empty folder, you cannot have Git on an empty folder. It does not work. It doesn't have anything to keep track of, so it does not make sense. And basically that's what this is telling you. It's telling you to just, you create a string inside of a file, just to, at least to have something there. And then you initialize Git on your local project. And then you need to add, I mean, in here it's telling you to add this file because we just created it up here, basically. And then you commit. And again, this is how Git knows where to push stuff. So you basically in here are telling, set the remote to this URL, because we just created it. So we created this URL just now. So now in here we can set the remote to it, and then we make the first push, basically. But for instance, right now in here on this project, I'm already in a Git project, so I should not run Git init here. And if I do, that now messed up everything, basically. So that's a very dangerous thing to do.
And what's init mean exactly?
Initialize.
And what's do?
Creating the dot.
It's initializing Git. It's telling to Git, basically Git start, you know,
Okay.
basically. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go up, and we're gonna create a folder here. This won't work. And I'm gonna give the same name I gave here. It doesn't have to be the same name. Actually, yeah, let's not give the same name. I'll just call it Git page. And I go to Git page. So now this folder, and this is just to list the folder, it's empty. If I open VS Code in this folder, it's empty. There is nothing here. So now let's put something here, right? Index HTML. Just whatever. It's not valid in HTML, but it's okay. We don't care. So now there's something there, right? So if we list, like, okay, there is an index.html there. But again, it's not, like, if we say git status, it's not a Git repository yet. And that's why we need to run this git init, which initializes Git. So now it says it's an empty Git repository. And if we run any of the commands, like there is no commits, it's on branch master, blah, 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 all those type of things. So let's just do what we know. We're gonna do git add index, right? Git commit nice page. And yeah, I need the M at least. So at this point right now, we have a repository on our GitHub, and we have a repository locally, but they do not know about each other, basically, because we have not connected them yet. And because if we run now this config list, and if we run exactly the same thing on future git, this one is connected to some repository. This one is just completely empty. So let's go back to the Git page, right? Yeah. Now, in here, it's telling us we have to specify where should this local repository talk to when it's remote. Because right now, if we want to push to master, we just push, it actually tells us like, no, I don't know where to push because this is only locally. So a lot of times, I do that a lot, like before actually having things on my GitHub or whatever, I start coding locally and I initialize Git, and so that I keep track of my commits and everything, because everything is local. And then at some point I'm like, okay, this is ready to go to GitHub. So then I create a repository, then I push everything. But so that I keep track of stuff, I always have Git locally. So now what basically we need to do is to copy this, paste here. Didn't told us anything, but oh yeah, we need to do -u origin master. Now it's going to do all that stuff. Now when we refresh this page, the documentation is gone, and now it shows the index.html we created basically, and it's there. So now they know about each other. So now you can do git checkout new branch, and now you can do your changes here. Git push. And now this works as we've saw already before. It's a normal, completely normal workflow. We can merge, confirm, now git checkout master, git pull, and now both local and remote know about each other. Okay, so now there is also the case of it's on GitHub, like you have all your projects on GitHub.
Yeah.
You get a new computer, or you clean your computer, like delete all the folders, right? So now how to get them? Like I want to work on this project now. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna clear this, go one up, and I'm gonna remove the Git page folder. So now there is no Git page folder here. And when I open my VS Code, yeah, it's deleted. It's gone. Nowhere to be found. So that's what we actually talked in the beginning, the clone part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you say, like when you go to a GitHub repository, you can either clone with SSH or with HTTPS. The differences between those two. SSH, it's secure. It's a very secure thing where you need to have a password locally on your machine, very hidden. Nobody can crack it. Nobody can do anything about it. That's also why I cannot use the library network to push or pull, because I'm using SSH and the library network is not secure. So it's a very good thing to have, but it takes you a little bit to set up. So if you go to GitHub, like connecting GitHub to SSH, it's a very long thing to do. You can try to do it. Every time I try to do it, there's always something that I don't remember, because it's also something you don't do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, I did it when I got this computer. So now I haven't done it in 2 years. So if I have to do it again, I won't, honestly, I won't remember what's the steps. But again, it's just for security. But any of them work. Usually, if you use HTTPS, this is basically a URL to a website. So it completely works fine. I'm going to use SSH, but that does not affect anything on the commands or anything. Like it's exactly the same stuff. So now we have git clone, right? And we paste the URL. Now if we do this, it automatically creates that folder with that name.
Same name.
With the exact same name of your project. And that's for normal reasons, right? Because usually if you give that name, it means that you want that. So now here we have a folder called Akifuture Git page. But if you want it in a different one, you just need to like make a space and then give the name of the folder you want. And basically it creates that folder. So now here, where is Git page? Where is
Yeah,
Git page?
At the top
Yeah,
of
there,
the
okay.
page.
So there is this one here and there is this one here, and they are exactly the same with the same content, basically.
Mm.
And now, for instance, I'm gonna do something crazy.
But that's not good to have two.
Depends, actually. For instance, let me just open the other one. Like your future Git page. So now I have two projects, like this, the same project, but two folders, right? Now, sometimes the reason why I do this sometimes is so that I have one for testing new stuff and one to work.
Yeah, same with me.
So for instance, if somebody does a change to this code and I want to test that without updating my project, then I just clone it into a different folder and say like, oh, this one now is the same project, just with a different branch, for instance. Because, for instance, if we go to Git page, okay, Git fetch, does it work? Yeah. New branch. Okay. It's the one from Git page. Oh, no, because I haven't done those changes. Yeah, that's a stupid one. Okay, so now in this one, if we do a checkout of another branch, testing, and this is Git page, so now, well, now, on Git page, we are doing some changes, but on this one, Akifuture Git page, we are on master all the time. So again, this is just so that you can change the folder names if you want, but the project is still going to be called this no matter what. So if we do a git config here, even though we are on a folder called Git page, this one still comes from that name. So you can always put it in a different folder if you want, if you feel like it. It's completely up to you. And yeah, and this is about, of course, cloning the project locally to your machine. Now we won't be working on Git page, so at least I remember the name. Now I close the command line, of course. Okay, we are here. I'll make this a bit more pretty. And the code is here. And I needed the other one with the notes. No, not this one. Yeah. Whoa, so many. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we saw, for instance, how to create the project, starting it locally, and then you have to write git init. But again, whenever you create a new project here, you have all the commands listed, so you don't really need to remember those all the time. But now what might happen, for some reason, we might want to overwrite everything. So for that, we are going to copy this. Set upstream URL. I need to figure out what's exactly the command. Okay, so I'm gonna go to another page. I'm gonna make here new folder, and in here I'm gonna open VS Code. Oh, why? Oh, new folder, right. And now I'm going to create a new file here, and styles.css. Yeah, something like this. Now it's a new Git repository. I want to add everything. It's committed. Now I'm going to do something that you should never need to do this, but just for the sake of it. And then I'm going to explain what probably happened here. Oh, no, there is no, why there is no URL? Okay, I'll try to create a new one, because then I have all the options there. Yeah, it's add remote, not set remote. So if we do this, yeah, now git push dash origin master. Now, what we did here, update for rejected remote that you have not locally. Doesn't go, no. Yeah, okay. So now basically what happened is that index is gone. Because what I did is that I started the new project locally, and I set the URL to be this one. So now when I pushed my changes, actually the first time I pushed, it actually told me like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Are you sure? Because what you have locally is not the same thing that you have up there. And then I said -F, which means force, like I know what I'm doing. But for instance, this can happen by mistake. Like you can actually be completely overriding a different project. That now when we go here, the main problem of it, the history is gone.
You're gonna get it back?
No, it's gone. because the .git folder locally was a new one, and it did not have any history of what this was before. So basically, we just overwrote everything, which basically means we lost everything.
Because on your local, it was stored in another folder or
Yes,
another repo.
exactly. So now, I mean, of course, because we have it stored somewhere else locally, we can actually still bring it back because we have Hack Your Future Git page. And I also need to force, otherwise it might tell me no can do. So now if we refresh this one, now the index is back there. And now the commits are the ones from the index one, not the ones with the CSS one. Because we overrode it again. And of course, you should not do this. If you find yourself, if you have to write -f, means that you have to force things. You should think about what you're doing. But again, this is possible if you want to just overwrite the whole thing, like, oh, all my website is wrong. I don't want that. I don't want that history there. You know, I've done that before. Like, I don't like what I did, so I'm just gonna put a new one. Like, that's it. The history is gone. I mean, it sometimes might be useful, but you need to be careful of what you're doing, of course. All right.
How to delete an entire folder of your repo?
Oh, yeah. Folder. That's first we have to create it, so then we can delete it. So for instance, because yes, we've been talking about files, but this is.
But before I continue here, this code dot what you're using, it's something you make, or we can use it.
VS Code depends. I mean, I can do it. I did a little bit of code for it, so that I can open VS Code from this folder.
Okay, so there's something you did. It's not in Bash.
No, it is.
It should be. If you have VS Code installed, I think it works right away. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I cannot promise that, but I think so.
Oh, okay.
So we have, I don't know, let's make more files or more folders. Assets. Yeah, and assets going to be empty. So now here, and that's also the fun thing. Assets, the folder I created, it's empty. So it's not listed here because, again, for Git, there is that thing like the folder is empty. I don't need to keep track of it. And that's, I'll just write something here that I need to talk about before I forget.
So they keep track on files, not the folder itself.
Yeah, technically, yeah. I'll write it here. No, Git ignore. We also have to talk about that one, but first let's look at the folder one, deleting, whatever. So if I add something inside of the folder, temp.svg, okay, this is not valid, but we don't care. So now if we do git status here, now we have two folders. But as you can see, we only have the folders, not the files. So if one of the files have, if one of the folders have more than one files, header.css. It's a beautiful website. Every time we go do git status, it doesn't matter how many files are there. It just tells us like there is these folders here, because basically it's because they don't exist yet. So it does not make sense for Git to list everything here. But now if we say git add, now we can add individually. But for instance, let's say we want to add the temp.svg. So then we need to write the whole path for it. Because if we just do this, this means nothing. So we need to add specifically. And that this step is where this comes handy, because now we added everything, like folder, files, whatever. We added everything, whatever is there. So now if we write git status, now it's not only the folders that it shows, it actually shows everything that we're going to add. So for instance, if you start, let's say, a React project that creates all those files and folders, and we run git status, it's going to be a very huge list, because it's going to list everything that you have there, everything that you're going to add as new. So we have to commit. Now we push. So now we have everything here, or we should. Not yet. Yeah, so we have now 2 folders with the respective stuff there. Now let's say we want to remove the assets folder. We don't want the image there for some reason. So the way to do it is that, I mean, you have to remove it, right? Delete from here. And now you basically, again, by keep writing git status every time you do something, you can also see like, oh, this is what I should do. So for instance, you can use git add /rm, which means remove, which means you can either use git add or git remove to update what will be committed. So basically that's what we have to do. We say git remove assets /temp dot. Oh yeah, because the folder does not exist locally. I don't have I think it's vg. And basically told you like, okay, this that used to exist, and because right now it does not exist anymore. Even before we wrote this, it did not existed already, but it existed on the git memory basically. So now it removed it. So when you write now git status, basically it's telling you that whenever you commit, it's going to delete, it's going to trigger the action, which is the one on the left of that thing. So now we say git commit. And yeah, and as you saw, I did not wrote git add because I didn't want to add, I wanted to remove. So, I mean, they mean what they mean. And now when I say git push, now somewhere here, blah, 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 yeah, it's gone from there. So
Okay.
it's the same exact steps. It's just that when you want to remove, you need to remember to write git remove or git rm. That tells, even though the file does not exist on your machine anymore, you need to tell Git that, oh, if you were keeping track of this file, don't anymore, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what you have to do to remove stuff. And then, and I think that might be one of the last things.
Can
Notes.
you differentiate what is a workspace? On VS Code, it says that either you want to open a workspace or you just want to open a folders. I mean, what's the...
From what I believe, a workspace can have more folders inside, and they don't have to be on the same structure. From what I know. So for instance, I could actually have these two open in one VS Code.
Okay.
Something like that. I don't use VS Code that much, so but I know that you can add a new add folder to workspace. So basically it creates 2 folders inside of here, but it does not create them on your machine. It just visually looks like it's 2 folders. I think that's what it does. One thing that you guys probably talked about, this is so that you don't push stuff to Git that you should not have in Git. For instance, node modules, you should not. It's a very big folder that has a lot of things. Like it would basically, your connection, internet connection, cannot push that, because basically what you are doing when you say push, you are uploading files. That's why you see there it's that speed. So if your connection is bad, you cannot upload files. So if you want to push all your modules, which you shouldn't, then that's crazy. And then there is other things that, for instance, let's say I have a notes here that are for me as a developer that I like to do, and then I was like, oh, create the assets, and then I want to, I don't know, add more style, but I don't want this public. I don't want other people to see this on my project, right? So what I can do is on the git, the git ignore has to be .gitignore, to start with a dot. In here, I can say notes.txt, which means that Git will ignore this file. A lot of times on the git ignore, you see this. The one you see a lot is this.log, which basically means I'm going to ignore every file that has a .log extension. So again, if you add things to the git ignore, you should be careful of what you're adding because it can ignore things that you don't want to be ignored. So, but again, in here we can specify these nodes. Now in here, when we say git status, we only have git ignore there to add. If we remove nodes from here, now we have both, because now we are not ignoring the nodes. What's the problem of adding a git ignore file after you've done a lot of things? Is that imagine that for some reason we don't want the styles on GitHub right now, but they are already there. So we can always say styles, and again, styles is a folder. So if you do this, it will ignore everything that is inside of the folder. So now when we say this, wait, oh, I'll add the notes as well so it's not messing up. .txt. Now in here doesn't necessarily telling you that the styles are not gonna go there. So basically, in order to do something like this, you would have to remove the styles as well from Git with git rm. You basically would have to tell Git to forget about this. Otherwise, even though it's on git ignore, but Git already knows about it, you know. So it's like, well, I have all the documentation here of what happened on that folder. You have to tell me to not to worry with that, not just by putting styles here, but to actually say git remove and then whatever you want to remove from there.
So you have to add git ignore before you commit, or?
I would say you should have git ignore as a beginning. Like you start a Git project and you add a git ignore to it. So then everything that you add to it, it becomes better basically. For instance, when you create, where is it? Okay, I need to React week whatever 5. So this is a React project, the one we worked on week 5, and I created this project with a create React app basically. So when you do that, usually it already brings a git ignore thing. And where is it actually? Okay, I need to go there. React week 5. Oh, the week 5 doesn't, because that's different. Week 1 definitely does. Oh. Okay, let's close this one. Week 1 also doesn't. Okay. Week 2. Yeah, okay. This one has it there. Okay, so this project was created with Create React App. And actually, Create React App already even has a Git folder to it and everything. You basically just need to tell it where to push to. You just need to say like push to this place. And when you open your git ignore, all of this stuff is already there. And there is even a comment explaining why, like, what is this for, basically. So like, this is for production, so you should not have the production on GitHub, basically. This is for testing, this is for dependencies. And then there is even this link here that kind of explains what is the git ignore type of thing. Because if you're using different programming languages, you might need a different, I mean, not a different git ignore, but different items here. Because for instance, if you're using, let's say PHP, it does not use node modules. JavaScript uses node module, PHP doesn't. So if you're using that, then you don't need the node modules there, but you might need something else. So it's also depending on languages, depending on basically everything. And actually, now that I mention the Create React app thing, I think we can end with one example of that.
Just to confirm, Marco, you installed Git and also Bash on your machine?
No, Bash is installed by default. Every single, usually a Windows computer has a different type of Bash, but whenever you install Git, whatever Bash Git needs comes with it. So that's.
But you have to, when you install you install Git, there is a box that you have to tick.
Yeah, you have to check that you want to use.
That's a Git Bash.
Yeah.
If you forget.
Yeah, if you don't do that, then you have to use the Windows one, which the commands are similar. Some of them are a little bit different. I think even the new Windows even already accepts all the commands from Git, because I think before, for instance, to create a new folder, it was not mkdir, it was something different. No, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something different. Whatever.
What are we doing here now? Or?
I'm starting a new React project, just to show, for instance, what would be the steps of starting a new React project. So I ran the command create React app to a folder called testing Git. So now I have this folder here, testing Git. If I cd testing Git code and open VS Code, now this is our basic React application comes. So we know that there is a git ignore, we know that there is all that type of stuff, right? But now if I do this, as you can see, there is no upstream. Like there is no place on GitHub where this is, even though there is a Git already here. It's because when you run create React app, it starts Git for you and everything. Basically, it does everything for you. Even if you run git log, there is already a commit there, made from you. Like you did that commit without even touching anything, that says initialize project using create React app, and all the files are added, everything is added. So now, if we want this in our GitHub, without any change that we did to it, we just want like a starting point of the project. So in this case, we don't need any of these steps. And that's where this one comes. We only need these two steps, because basically we need to set the remote, like to tell our Git, local Git, to say where you should push to, and then push. So now if we do this, and now this, now this might take a little bit to upload everything. Now whenever you refresh your repository again, now all your React stuff is there. With the correct git ignore, the node modules is not here, all the unnecessary stuff is not here. So, but all the code that you see that comes as default is there. So, I mean, if you want to start a React website on your own, like I don't want anything, homework, whatever. My suggestion is start a create React app somewhere on a folder, empty, like not even close to anything. Create a repository, push it, and now from now on, start branching. Like, oh, now I want to create a menu. So now git checkout -b menu. Now you create the menu you want, program it, whatever works, commit, push, and then it updates on your GitHub. And that would be the steps I would go for if I were you, to start like a brand new React application.
What is fetch, Marco? What is it used for again?
Oh, fetch.
Yeah.
This basically git pull brings all the changes. Mm-hmm. Git fetch brings the idea of changes, which basically, if there are changes, it does not update. It just tells you like, yes, there are changes. Because sometimes, like, let's say if everybody is working on master, which you shouldn't, but if everybody is, and you do a git pull, all your work can be overwritten by whatever comes. Because you don't know, are there changes there? Like, there is no way to know, like, is there changes? And if you run git fetch, it basically, it tells you a little bit that there are changes. So for instance, if we go here, can we edit this? Yeah, here, okay. Let's just remove this thing. So this fetch was different from the previous one, right? Before I ran git fetch and nothing happened. Now I ran git fetch and it said like, well, there is some stuff there, which basically tells me, like, I just do it to see, like, is there something there? Basically it tells me, like, if I run now git pull, whatever is there is gonna come.
You mean if ever I make changes on something in my computer with the same branches and the same everything, so if ever I git pull, whatever is on my local will be overwritten?
Yeah. I mean, for instance, in here it won't be overwritten because we are on a different branch. We made the changes in master. So
if you make pull to run,
if we pull master, all the changes will come. But now in here, if we can run git pull, it even tells us like, no, I mean, this is just a branch. Like, there's nothing to pull from it. But if we are on master, check out master git pull. Now, what we removed just came in right away without even telling us like, oh, I'm about to remove this. No, because the changes were done. So, I mean, it should not be surprised, but it might be. And that's why if you run a git fetch, you can see like something happened. Like, you don't know exactly what happened, but you can see something happened. So some changes might be there. Okay, now we already run the pull, but if we go to the branch actually. So what I usually do is git fetch. Now this one is going to tell me nothing happened, but if I would see this whole thing, I'm like, okay, there are some changes there. So now I can run a diff against it.
That's how you do it.
And I can see like, oh, this is what's going to happen. It's okay, maybe. Then I can pull. If it's not okay, then calm down. But again, these cases are not that often. It's also something that I got very used to write git fetch, at least in the beginning, and now I do it often.
So basically, that's the reason why you cloned the main repository on your local with another name, so that whenever you pull to the repo with the other, your other folder will not be affected.
Yeah, no. Only where you are is going to be affected.
Okay.
That's the only thing. But for instance, of course, if you are creating an Express server or a database or whatever, and you want to upload to Git, in terms of like the git ignore folder, you need to take care of that because it is not created for you. You are the one that has to go there and know what cannot be public and what can. And that might be a bit hard, let's say. But again, there is not really rules for that. It's up to you to figure out that.
Can you undo your deleted file on your repo? Or it cannot be recovered?
What do you mean? For instance, if
Yeah,
someone deletes a file and then pushes and merges and then I want to undo, yes, but that's a bit harder because basically you would have to go. Let me find the other repository. You basically would have to go, yeah, here. Yeah.
Into the commits.
Yeah, you would have to go, for instance, I don't know, let's say in here we deleted that. And this number here, it's important then. Because then you can say, yeah. Okay, just by clicking on it. No. Okay, let's say it's this one. It's impossible to copy from here. Yeah, that number is basically a short version of this one up here, or this one up here, right? So basically, there is a thing on Git called cherry pick. which basically you can say like, oh, I want to pick this exact commit that happened 2 years ago, and I want it back. Whatever happened there, I want it back. But that might create a lot of conflicts. Every time we have to do that, it's always like, okay, give me at least 2 hours to figure out what to do here, because it is a hard task, because it's not that easy. But again, it should not happen that often. It should not. But a lot of times what I end up doing is I just recreate everything in one new branch. Like, we deleted this and that and that. Okay, I'll just do it. It cannot be that much that I cannot do it myself. Create the folder, create the files, copy whatever I need, and then it's a new branch. Instead of bringing history back, I just create new history on it. Basically, I think that would be the best case to handle things like that. Are there questions about Git?
Yeah.
Probably there.
Is it okay if you talk about authorizations? Like when one of our homeworks, it asks that in order for us to fetch our repositories, we need to be authorized on GitHub.
Oh yeah, but that Git authentication probably, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for that there has to be another way to do it, because but from what I know on their authentication in JavaScript, you'd have to make a function that calls their authentication and then gives you back a token.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there on, every time you fetch something, you need to give that token on a URL, or I think, or as a header, something like that. I didn't really use it until now, so I'm not really sure how it works, but usually that's how authentication works, is that you call an endpoint that you only call once to get a token back, and then that token you have to send it every time you want to call something again.
When you sign yourself as a developer, they give you that authorization.
Yeah, that token should be given somewhere.
And then you pass as a parameter for your fetching or. I remember I did that, but not with the fetch. I used it with the HTML. Request.
HTTP request.
request, yeah.
Authentication.
I need to go, Marco, because I have time to catch also. But thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, but that would be you can create a token for yourself and then use that as a parameter.
Yeah, so that's the only
I think that's the way that
the only
they work.
usage of the token.
At least I believe that would be the way to do it.